Hi guys, it's Kales, and I am new to this booktube universe, so I'm making my very first wrap-up video where I tell you all of the books I read over the course of the last month, which in this case is February, and then I am going to tell you what books I plan on reading in March. Although knowing me, I don't know how solidly I'm going to stick to that list, but we're gonna try. Books in the month of February, which is by some people's standards not a lot, and by some people's standards way too many. So yeah. The first book I finished reading, you guys have already heard me talk about, is Ali Carter's All Fall Down, which I think I gave like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This book is about Grace Blakely, who moves in with her grandfather, and she knows 3 things: that she's not crazy, her mother was murdered, and one day she will find the murderer and make him pay. And it's about her life in this foreign country, Adria, and her adventures on Embassy Row there as her grandfather is the American ambassador. If you want to hear my full review on it, click here, and that will link you to that video. The next book that I read in February was the book Love, Rosie by Cecelia Ahern, and I read this book because I saw the trailer for the movie. I really wanted to see the movie, and so I thought I owed it to the book to read the book first, and oh my goodness gracious, this was a great book. 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed the way that it's set up. It's about 2 friends, Alex and Rosie, who are Irish in the book and British in the movie. It chronicles their life from when they're 5 to when they're 50 in a series of letters and IM messages, and it's just about love and life and family and friendship, and I really enjoyed it. The third book that I read in February was Liesl in Poe by Lauren Oliver, and I'm very excited because Lauren Oliver is coming to the Tattered Cover bookstore here in Denver on March 13th. So I'm going to be doing a spotlight author video on Lauren Oliver because I've read now Liesl in Poe, Rooms, Before I Fall, and Delirium. And then her new book, Vanishing Girls, is coming out later this month. And I really enjoyed this one. Overall, it's a great middle reader book. I love the intricacy of it and how intertwined all the character stories are. It's about this little girl named Liesl who is locked in an attic by her stepmother, and she meets this shadow creature, because it doesn't have a gender, named Poe, and they go on an adventure together to return her father's ashes to the willow tree. The next book I read on my series of travels, because this month I went to Ohio and New York in the space of 10 days, and I read this book, The Falconer'S by Mary Hoffman, who is one of my favorite authors because she writes the Extravaganza series, and she did not disappoint. This book was hilarious and page-turning and absolutely wonderful. It takes place in a city in Italy that's near Assisi, but it's made up. It follows the adventures of Silvano. He gets accused of a murder that he did not commit, and so he gets sent to a monastery, and he has to hide out there. And then it also follows Chiara. It's spelled like that. I can't pronounce things. Because her brother cannot afford to keep her, she gets sent to a nunnery, which is right next to the monastery that Silvano gets sent to, and murders happen, and a bunch of foul play, and again, more intricate interweaving stories. I barely could put it down. I remember for my first plane ride, I read the first 160 pages and I had to put it down because it was the only book I brought, and I needed to save it for later. The last book I read was one that I bought very recently, as in like 2 days ago, and then I read it all in one day in the span of 7 hours. So if that doesn't tell you how good this book is, I don't know what does. This book is called The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and holy freaking cow! Ugh! This book, I walked around the house after finishing this book, 7 hours of straight reading, mind you. I walked around the house and was just like, oh my gosh, somebody has to read this book. Somebody has to read this book so I could talk to somebody about this book. And just, so good. So good. I hope there's more. I really want there to be more. It's like Game of Thrones, X-Men, and Hunger Games had a baby, and it's the Red Queen, and it's all of that awesome wrapped into one. It follows this girl named Mar Barrow, who lives in a world that is divided by blood. There's the silver blood and the red blood. If you have red blood, you are in the lower class system, you have to work for your money, and it's like living in the slums. Whereas if you're Silverblood, you're kind of like a god because you have these special powers. Mare, through a series of events, finds herself in the world of the Silvers and meets the princes of the Silvers and the world and the revolutionariness behind it and the just, oh my gosh, it's so good. Definitely 5 out of 5 stars. Man, I hope there's more. Oh, I want there to be so much more because it's so good. So good. So those were the 5 books that I read over the course of February, and here are at least some of the books that I'm planning on reading in March. So one of the books that I'm hoping to read in March is The Boston Girl by Anita Diamant, because this book came out way back in December. I met Anita and befriended her, and this is her new book that came out. It follows the life of Addie Baum, who is a young Jewish girl living in Boston, and her story starts in 1915, and it's about her coming-of-age story. It goes from 1915 to 1985. So I'm very excited. Can't wait to start this one. Additionally, I started reading A Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. This was another book that I got at my used book sale haul. And for me, I wanted to read this because I saw it was turned into a mini-series, and I wanted to do another one of my comparison of the mini-series and the book. Plus, I started reading it, and I already think it's a hoot. It follows Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy 6 years into their marriage, and a death comes to Pemberley, as you can tell. And I haven't gotten to the murder yet, but I'm excited. Last but certainly not least is The Magician's Land by Lev Grossman. I read The Magicians such a long time ago, like 2 or 3 years ago when I went to LeakyCon, and then I got my hands on the second one, and this third one came out in August, and I started reading it in August. As you can see, I was already in it a ways, and then things happened. I started moving all over the place, and I never got a chance to like sit down and really sink my teeth into it, because this is the type of book that you really have to pay attention to, because Lev Grossman's writing is so dense and so wonderful and so intellectual. I love it, but I really have to pay attention, and for me, I want to actually take the time to finish this series because it's so good and so insightful and so intelligent. For those of you who don't know, it follows a young gentleman by the name of Quentin Coldwater, although but I think at this point he's like 30, so he's not so young. Still young, but beside the point, he's not a teenager anymore. He was like 19 when the series started. I don't want to tell you much more than that, because if you haven't read The Magicians or The Magician's King, then you need to read those first. So when I'm finished with this one, I'm going to do a review on the trilogy itself, because it's just a great series and I really can't wait to see how it ends. So that is my February wrap up and my March to be read. Like I said, I'm probably going to read more or less, and there's no guarantee I'll actually read those, but maybe by putting it on camera it will actually give me the incentive to do so. So leave comments telling me what you think of the books that I have yet to read or that I have read. There'll be plenty of more videos headed your way. Until next time! Hi everyone, it's Kales, and I just recently finished Ali Carter's new novel, All Fall Down.